YouTube, how we doing, family? It's your boy, Yo. And there's another episode of Yo Hoops. We go through every NBA game every day. Today's Wednesday, February 12th, and we have a 15-game NBA card. I'm going to walk you through every game, let you know which sides I like, and stick around because I'll let you know my highlighted play of the day. I do this every day for free, so make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let me know your favorite games in the comment section below. Without further ado, let me get into today's recap. Recapping yesterday, we did drop our highlighted play of the day. We took the Indiana Pacers plus 2.5 against the New York Knicks. I thought it was a good spot for Indiana being at home, but the Pacers defense was embarrassing to watch. Karl Anthony Towns dropped 40, 12, and 5, and Josh Hart dropped 30, 10, and 5. They ultimately aired out the Pacers by 13 points, and really, the score should have been worse than that. The Knicks were routing them all game. Now we're 3-8 against the spread on February's highlighted plays. Let's go get back in that win column today. We have a big boy card, so I'm going to zip through it. I won't keep you guys here all day, but without further ado, let me get into today's games. In our first matchup of the evening, we have the Charlotte Hornets in Orlando taking on the Orlando Magic. Magic are laying 12.5 points, and the total is 203. We know at home is where Orlando plays their best basketball. They're now 12-7 against the spread as home favorites, so they have been cashing in this spot, but they have failed to cover in their last 3 meetings. Charlotte is proficient road underdogs themselves, but they're now severely banged up. LaMelo Ball won't play in this one. Mark Williams is ruled out, and then of course Brandon Miller is out all season. While I do lean towards Orlando, 12.5 is a big spread to lay. I always let you guys know Orlando is a top 5 defense in the league. They're actually the second best, to be specific, in the entire NBA on the defensive front, and that's why we cash so many unders with them. I do expect Orlando's offense to get going in this one, but I also think they absolutely clamp this ragtag Hornets team. We're taking the Hornets team total under 95 points as our first selection of today. Let's move. In our next matchup, we have the Indiana Pacers in Washington taking on the Washington Wizards. Pacers are laying 9.5 points, and the total is 239. I hated what I saw from the Pacers yesterday. They couldn't knock down open shots, and they weren't playing a lick of defense. They now fly to DC on the second leg of a back-to-back in this one. The Wizards have looked good recently. They're now 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 games. They've been hooping after trading Kyle Kuzma. I do think the Pacers can air out the Wizards in this one. They're likely motivated after getting whooped up by the Knicks yesterday, but with the way Washington's played recently, I don't want to lay double digits on them with this Pacers team on no rest. We're taking the Wizards plus the 9.5 as our next selection of today. Let's move. In our next matchup, we have the San Antonio Spurs in Boston taking on the Boston Celtics. Celtics are laying 9 points, and the total is 234. In my opinion, these are the 2 most overrated teams in the league. Problem is, Boston has earned the right to be overrated. They stay getting wins, and they're recent NBA champions. The Spurs started getting overpriced the second De'Aaron Fox touchdown in San Antonio. The Spurs have now failed to cover in 9 straight meetings. That's embarrassing. For Boston, Jaylen Brown is questionable for this one, and Drew Holiday is ruled out, but I think they still have enough to air out the Spurs by double digits. The Spurs do have to cover against the spread at some point, but traveling into Boston, that's not the spot where I'm trying to catch him. We're taking the Celtics laying the 9 as our next selection of today. Let's move. In our next matchup, we have the Atlanta Hawks in New York taking on the New York Knicks. Knicks are laying 8.5 points, and the total is 239.5. The Knicks have hooped this season. They're now 8-2 in their last 10 and 14, 11, and 1 against the spread as home favorites. They do come into this game on the second leg of a back-to-back. We know that they played the Pacers yesterday. The Hawks on the other side have also been good road underdogs this season, though. They're 13-9 against the spread in this spot. The thing for me is we know what Trae Young does in New York. He goes crazy, hitting logo threes, hitting the crowd with the brrr. Trae Young goes insane in New York. The Knicks did win the last meeting between these two, 110-119, and that game was in New York on January 20th of this year. But the Hawks won the last 3 meetings before that. The Hawks are 3-4 or 3-1 in the last 4 between these two teams. I see this as a competitive rivalry type game, and I definitely want 8.5 points in my back pocket. We're taking the Hawks plus 8.5 as our next selection of today. Let's move. In our next matchup, we have the Cleveland Cavaliers in Toronto taking on the Toronto Raptors. Cavs are laying 14.5 points, and the total is 235.5. The Raptors do come into this one on the second leg of a back-to-back as well. They played the Sixers yesterday. We know home underdogs is a spot where Toronto's cashed, where they've thrived this season. They're now 16-7-1 against the spread in this spot. They've cashed at a 70% clip. The thing is, they are banged up here, and Cleveland has been the number 2 ATS team in the league all season overall, even better than the Raptors. The Raptors are still without RJ Barrett, Jakob Poeltl, and Brandon Ingram. They did win a hard-fought game against the Sixers yesterday. It came down to the final possession, though. And now here on tired legs after exerting so much energy yesterday, I don't think they have enough to compete with this rested, healthy Cavs team. We're taking the Cavs laying the 14.5 as our next selection of today. Let's move. In our next matchup, we have the Philadelphia 76ers in Brooklyn taking on the Brooklyn Nets. Sixers are laying 3 points, and the total is 213. The Sixers make me sick. They're currently on a 3-game losing streak, and they failed to cover in their last 6 straight meetings. We faded them with ease last night, and they lost on the money line as minus 350 favorites against the Toronto Raptors. Now they fly to Brooklyn on the second leg of a back-to-back. This definitely isn't a good spot. And this line being so short at only 3 points looks fishy to me. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Nets blow out the Sixers in this spot. Joel Embiid almost never plays on back-to-backs, which they are on one here. The Sixers are definitely going to be shorthanded. Tyrese Maxey dropped 5 points in 34 minutes just last night. The Sixers don't scare me at all. Give me the Nets plus the 3 as our next selection of today. Let's move. In our next matchup, we have the Detroit Pistons in Chicago taking on the Chicago Bulls. Pistons are laying 6.5 points, and the total is 236.5. Sheesh! The Pistons absolutely aired out the Bulls yesterday. These two are matching up for the second time in 2 days, and the Pistons won the game yesterday 132-92. That's a 40-point win. This game is again in Chicago. This is definitely a game I'll be staying away from, but with a gun to my head, I'm sorry, but I'm taking the Bulls again. I know it sounds crazy seeing them get dismantled yesterday, but that's NBA basketball for you. The same game can be played 2 days in a row, and you get completely different outcomes the second day. Like I said, I'm going to be staying away for the most part, but I might throw a couple dollars on the Bulls money line just to have a little fun. We're taking the Bulls plus 6.5 as our next selection of today. Let's move. In our next matchup, we have the Miami Heat in Oklahoma City taking on the Oklahoma City Thunder. Thunder are laying 14 points, and the total is 220. Looking at the injury reports for this one, Tyler Hero and Jaime Jaquez are both questionable for the Heat, and then Chet Holmgren is ruled out for the Thunder. While the Heat have added some new additions that will definitely help their squad down the line, like Andrew Wiggins, Alec Burks, Kyle Anderson, it doesn't look like their team is playing cohesive yet. They got aired out in their last couple meetings, and even on the season, they're just around 50% at 7-8 against the spread as road underdogs. The Thunder at home? On another level. We know that they go crazy. They're now 18-8-1 against the spread as home favorites. Chet won't play here, but he hasn't played all season, so that's business as usual for the Thunder. I see no reason to step in front of OKC here. We're taking the Thunder laying the 14 as our next selection of today. Let's move. In our next matchup, we have the Milwaukee Bucks in Minnesota taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves. Wolves are laying 6.5 points, and the total is 225.5. There are a lot of moving pieces in this game, so make sure you guys are keeping an eye on the injury reports. For the Bucks, Giannis is ruled out, and then Pat Connaughton and Damian Lillard are probable. For the Timberwolves, Dante DiVincenzo and Julius Randle are still ruled out, and then Mike Conley and Anthony Edwards are questionable for this one. Of course, it makes a huge difference if either Ant or Mike Conley go, so like I said, keep an eye. I see this as a pretty evenly matched contest, but this one comes down, for me, to who we know the Wolves are as home favorites. On the season, they're now 7-17 against the spread in this spot. No team has lost you more money. The Bucks are just 4-6 against the spread as road dogs, but they have looked decent recently playing with Dame and no Giannis. They've been stacking wins. Since they're giving us 6.5 in our back pocket with Milwaukee, I do lean in that direction. We're taking the Bucks plus the 6.5 as our next selection of today. Let's move. In our next matchup, we have the Sacramento Kings in New Orleans taking on the New Orleans Pelicans. Kings are laying 5 points and the total is 239. These are two teams I don't like backing often. The Kings have been disappointing all season. As road favorites, they're now just 4-9-1 against the spread. You're not cashing with Sacramento. The Pelicans have been better home dogs at 9-8-1 against the spread, but they do come into this one banged up. Looking at the Pelicans injury report, Herb Jones and DeJounte Murray are, of course, done for the season, and now CJ McCollum is questionable for this one. The Kings come into this one at full strength. While I'm typically not in a rush to back the Kings, I do think this is a good spot for them, for their team to find some chemistry and beat down on a banged-up Pelicans team. So we're taking the Kings laying the 5 as our next selection of today. Let's move. In our next matchup, we have the Phoenix Suns in Houston taking on the Houston Rockets. Rockets are laying 7 points, and the total is 225. The Suns do come into this one on the second leg of a back-to-back. They got aired out by the Grizzlies yesterday. Over the last couple of seasons, the Rockets have been one of the most dominant home teams in the league, but that's starting to change in the back half of this season. They're now just 9-11 against the spread as home favorites. Not even profitable. But the Suns are the worst road dogs in the league. Phoenix is now 3-9 against the spread, getting points on the road, like in this spot. The Suns are also on no rest, so I wouldn't be surprised to see a player like KD be added to the injury report late. That being said, I really haven't liked what I've seen from the Rockets recently. They've lost a bunch of games outright to teams like the Nets, the Timberwolves at home, the Mavericks with no AD. The Rockets really haven't looked good. I'm not necessarily in a rush to back the Suns here, considering how they performed as road underdogs, but I do think it's the right play. We're taking the Suns plus the 7 as our next selection of today. Let's move. In our next matchup, we have the Los Angeles Lakers in Utah taking on the Utah Jazz. Lakers are laying 9 points, and the total is 237. The Lake Show Lakers, huh? They look good in Luka's debut, and really they've been rolling ever since trading AD. They're currently on a 6-game win streak, winning all 6 games in dominant fashion. These two teams did face off 2 days ago, where the Lakers won 132-113. That game was in LA, and now we do travel to Salt Lake City. The Lakers' injury report is slightly concerning here. So Gabe Vincent and Dorian Finney-Smith are ruled out. Luka is questionable, and then LeBron James and Austin Reeves are probable. Similar to what I mentioned in that Bulls-Pistons game, 2 identical games played on 2 different days can have 2 very different results. This game is slightly favorable to Utah compared to the last one because it's in Salt Lake City at elevation. I get it. I'm not in a rush to fade the Red Hot Lakers, but I do believe the Jazz is the right side in this one. We're taking Utah plus the 9 points as our next selection of today. Let's move. In our next matchup, we have the Portland Trailblazers in Denver taking on the Denver Nuggets. Nuggets are laying 11.5 points, and the total is 233. The Blazers' run finally came to an end. We were pretty effective in fading them in their last couple losses as well. They had covered against the spread in 11 straight meetings, but have now gotten aired out in their last 2. These two teams did face off just 2 days ago, where the Nuggets won 146-117. That was in Denver, and we're still here in Denver. In this one, the Blazers' injury report is significant as well. Looking at the IRs, the Blazers have DeAndre Ayton and Scoot Henderson both ruled out. Then Chris Murray, Robert Williams, and Jeremy Grant are all questionable. On the Nuggets side, Russell Westbrook and Peyton Watson are still ruled out. Michael Porter Jr. is questionable. Then Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon are both probable. Denver's one of the best home teams in the league. As home favorites, they're now 13, 7, and 1 against the spread. With Joker playing in this one, I don't see a way the Blazers keep it competitive in the Mile High City. We're taking the Nuggets laying the 11.5 as our highlighted selection of today. Let's move. In our next matchup, we have the Golden State Warriors in Dallas taking on the Dallas Mavericks. Warriors are laying 7 points, and the total is 233.5. I like the new look Warriors, man. Draymond and Jimmy Butler are in sync, and Steph can finally get back to doing what he do. The Warriors come into this meeting healthy. They're only missing Jonathan Kuminga. And on Dallas's side, they're still banged up. While I can see them competing in this one, I can't step in front of this red hot Warriors team. Like I said, I like the way they're playing with the addition of Jimmy Butler, so I won't overcomplicate this one. We're taking the Warriors laying the 7 as our next selection of today. Let's move. In our last and final matchup of the evening, we have the Memphis Grizzlies in LA taking on the LA Clippers. Clippers are laying 4.5 points, and the total is 237.5. This is going to be a fun game to end the night. Memphis does come into this one on the second leg of a back-to-back. They got the job done yesterday in Phoenix, and now they're traveling to LA. The Clippers have been the best home favorites in the league. We know that. They're currently sitting at 13-5 against the spread, laying points in LA. Memphis, on the other side, has hooped themselves, though. They're the best team against the spread overall in the league, and as home underdogs, they are 9-6 against the spread, so profitable. Both teams come into this one at full strength looking at the injury reports. Of course, keep an eye on the Grizzlies IR since they're coming into this one on a back-to-back. While this should be a competitive bout, in my opinion, I think the Grizzlies are the far better team. Getting points in our back pocket with the better team, that's the spot I want to be. The Grizzlies are on no rest, like I said, but they have a record of 3-0. They're undefeated this season when playing on no rest. So we're taking the Grizzlies plus the 4.5 as our last and final selection of the evening. And that's going to conclude today's video. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. We did drop our highlighted play yesterday, but I look to get back in that win column. I love the highlighted play for today, and I like quite a few games on this card. Make sure you're watching these games and looking at the live lines because you can almost always get better odds than what I'm giving out early in the morning before the injury reports are updated and before tip-off happens. Again, thank you for rocking with me. I do this every day for free. So make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It's your boy, Yo! And until the next one, I'ma catch y'all. Peace.